Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for Truth show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. It's a pleasure to have you back with us again today. Many of you have asked, how do I avail myself of all the previous episodes? Very simple. Go on YouTube, click A Time for Truth show, A Time for Truth show. Hit the subscribe button, and you'll be one of our members. There's no fee, there's no cost to you. We'll be very happy to have you, and you'll be able to have all the episodes of the last few years. And all those episodes that we've had many advances. But when we look at our society, our communities, especially here in New York, there's been some changes going on. Some are not so positive. And if we were in an airplane, we'd be worried that we're losing altitude. How much more altitude are we willing to lose before we possibly get into turbulence and crash? So tonight, we're very lucky to have two very special men with us, Hiram Monserrate and Ramon Ramirez. And first I'm going to introduce Hiram Monserrate, a dedicated public servant, community advocate, ex-Marine, husband, father, who's always had a purpose to create a secure community since he began his journey as a Marine, as a member of NYPD, at the age of 20, patrolling the 108th Street District. In 2001, he made history by becoming the first Latino elected to public office in the Queens Borough. His honors extended to represent Regal Park, Corona, Elmhurst, East Elmhurst, in the New York City Council. There you see him. With a career in public service spanning decades, he's proven time and time again that his dedication and strong effort for the community is unwavering. As a champion of the community, Monserrate is centered on ensuring that the voices of the community are not just heard, but actually acted upon. He's been featured in many media outlets advocating for a return of common sense, logical governing principles, and the restoration of a normal quality life where our kids can grow up in a safe environment. And he's brought a friend of his on the show, a president of the community, Ramon Ramirez, and we want a bit of warm welcome to District Leader Hiram Monserrate and to President Ramon Ramirez to A Time for Truth show. Bienvenidos, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to have you, and you know, there's a lot to cover. I wanted to ask you, because I was looking at your background, did you always have this passion to help the community?
Always. Since I was a little boy, I wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to be a police officer. I loved politics. I remember when I was a child in elementary school, I would see in the evening after doing my homework, I'd watch Nightline, 60 Minutes, Ted Koppel, Dan Rather, the anchors at the time. Wow, how media has changed in the last 20, 30 years.
Absolutely.
There was a time that we would be able to see real strong anchors that were reporting the news, the truth, and with no biases. Unfortunately, doesn't seem like we have that anymore. But it was a tremendous experience. And I remember as a child, I was most interested during the time of the Iran hostage crisis, which now 30, 40 years later, it seems like Iran continues to be a major problem in geopolitics for the United States and for that region of the world. Not that we're here to talk about geopolitics today, but it's the irony that these many years later, I tell people, if we don't know our history, we're doomed to repeat it.
That's right.
And that's very relevant to New York City today. What we're seeing on Roosevelt Avenue in Queens, which has been covered. I've been working with Mr. Ramon Ramirez, who is the president of Let's Improve Roosevelt Avenue. What we see there is lawlessness, anarchy, human trafficking, narcotics, gangs, cartels, shoplifting syndicates, stealing from the local merchants and selling the product right on the street. And instead of our elected officials standing up for the community and for the small business owners, they seem to be on the side of the people who are doing the wrong thing.
Right.
Prostitution, the pimps, the people who are stealing, and there's no protection for the hardworking people who have lived there. And let me be clear about this. In Jackson Heights, in Elmhurst, in Corona, in East Elmhurst, the majority of the community is immigrant. Or migrants, the new term, right? People have lived there as migrants 20, 30, 40 years. They created a community, an economic hub, a community that was a safe harbor. But now, our political environment has changed that. And there's a lot of factors to that, but there's one factor in particular that we cannot escape. And that is today, there's a sense in New York that the law is not being enforced. Sex trafficking is against the law in New York. Narcotics trafficking is against the law in New York. Shoplifting is against the law in New York. Prostitution is against the law in New York. Selling stolen goods on Roosevelt Avenue or on 90th Street is against the law in the state of New York. We need our law enforcement and our government officials to enforce the law and keep us safe. And that's my message.
It's a very important message. It's so true. You know, we suffer from the ills of what we allow to happen. You're so right. And you know what, Ramon, I want to ask you also at the beginning about what you see happening in your area.
Right now, especially in Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, Corona, right now it's very difficult situation. Why? Because we have a lot of prostitution in the community. The community is dirty. You have to enforce the law in the community. We feel like we lost the community. We have now very difficult situation on the street, especially in my neighborhood. I live in Jackson Heights. If you coming right now to walk all the Roosevelt Avenue, you cried. You cried the situation. We sent a letter the last week to the government, Hawker. We request 100 state troopers for cleaning up the community. We have a lot of gangs in the community, a lot of drugs in the community, a lot of prostitution. Right now, the most important issue in the community, you have elected official. He tried to legalize the prostitution in my community. This is very difficult. You can find it, brother, in any single corner in Roosevelt Avenue. In each corner, you find it 5, 6. You can imagine, easy that elected official get to legalize prostitution. And so that can give a license in my community to build prostitution in every single corner. We total it's unacceptable in the community that we came here, your program, thank you for inviting us to set what happened inside the Elmhurst, Corona, and Jackson Heights. This is unacceptable right now.
Absolutely. You know, what I want to tell our viewers, and it's a very important point that you're both making, is we've got to take a look at our kids, our youth. When we grew up, our parents and our grandparents worked hard to leave us the opportunities that we've had in our lifetime. And I think we have a responsibility, which is why I wanted to bring District Leader Monserrate, President Ramirez on this show, because they're real people. They're New Yorkers. They grew up here. They fought for New York. You know, I personally had a practice on 83rd and 37th Avenue, and that's where I started with dentistry. And I remember the way it was, and it was beautiful. It was a nice area. You go back at night, and I've seen what's been happening, with why this show is so important. Engineer, let me know when you have that video ready that I gave you, because, you know, thanks to the work of District Leader Monserrate and President Ramirez, we've been awakening for the need to collaborate. Let me know when that video is ready that you have. And in the meantime, what I was going to ask you is tell us about your Save Roosevelt project.
Well, it's actually a concept that was brainstormed by Mr. Ramirez himself, and I want to thank him publicly for that. You know, he brought me along, and I provided a lot of the logistical support. Obviously, your viewers should know I served in the City Council of New York for 7 years and the State Senate almost 2 years, and I've served as a district leader and presidential delegate, and 12 years in the New York City Police Department. I have a very good, strong understanding of the law and New York City and state government. And when he brought the idea to me, let's work together on making Roosevelt Avenue a better place. I remember when I was the councilman there, and Roosevelt Avenue was never perfect, but we had nothing to the degree of lawlessness that we have. We have more brothels than bodegas in Jackson Heights, Corona, and Elmhurst. I want to say that again. We have more brothels right now today in that community than we do bodegas. And it's truly become an urban crime zone. And there's so much crime. There's about 200 to 300 streetwalkers today walking around Roosevelt Avenue in the corner 24 hours a day.
200 to 300.
Over 200 to 300 on the street, plus the brothels.
Wow.
And I want to tell the viewers, can you imagine taking your children, elementary school age children, back and forth to school and having to walk past streetwalkers? I did an interview with 1010 Wins at 8 in the morning on K Street and Roosevelt Avenue. There were 7 streetwalkers. The reporter couldn't believe it. The gentleman is named Glenn Shuck. He did the airing that day. He could not believe it. And he said to me, Hiram, had I not come here, I wouldn't have believed it. But now that I see it, I understand it. And now, and I know that you have the tape, because of all the coverage and attention that we have brought to this issue, ABC, CBS, Pix News, 1010 Wins, New York Post, the Jackson Heights Post, the Queens Chronicle, Univision, all of them, they all covered it. I want to thank all the media, because had it not been for the media covering the story, this wouldn't have gotten out. And we have been pleading for resources. We wrote a letter to the governor. Madam Governor, send us 100 state troopers. Yes, we have the NYPD. It's not enough. The 110 and the 115 precinct both have a third less police officers today than they did 3 years ago. And 2.5 years ago, the city council voted to defund the police, $1 billion.
Wow.
And now, Mr. Ramirez talks about the fact that some of our elected officials not only supported, they introduced legislation to legalize prostitution. Imagine if it was legal, what Roosevelt Avenue would look like today.
Can I ask you a question?
It's outrageous.
I have to ask you a question, because when you mentioned that to me, what is the basis of their legalizing? What was their basis of legalizing?
I think their understanding, which I think is misapplied, is that you can better regulate it and tax it, and then ultimately misguided empowerment. And I want to say this.
Oh my God.
The daughters in our community should understand that prostitution is not a career path.
Right.
It's not a career path. We want the daughters of our community to be nurses and doctors and engineers. elected officials,
Mothers.
lawyers, mothers. That's what we need to be instilling in our young people and telling them where they should be headed. Look, none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. I've made my mistakes. I've paid my debt to society for my mistakes.
We all make mistakes.
But we move forward.
That's right.
But we are all entrusted with making a better society for our children, for the next generation. We failed. In our community of East Elmhurst, Corona, Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, that part of Queens, the leadership has failed. And our government has failed. Because it should never have gotten to this level, ever. There should have been alarms ringing when this was happening to stop it. It didn't happen overnight.
No, it
Didn't happen overnight.
It's so true what you're saying, and President Ramirez, I want you to comment on this because what District Leader Monserrate has mentioned is so true. How can they be thinking that you're going to take your daughter or your neighbor's daughter or your friend's daughter and you're going to tell them to be a prostitute for a living? I mean, I'm please comment on this.
Let me take a little brief story. When I came to Dominican Republic, the last June, I was 2 years and a half in Dominican Republic. When I came back, when I saw my community, I feel like I found the other community, other one,
Yes.
totally different. When you talk about the prostitution right now, especially in my community, the reason is very simple. You have three or four elected officials. They think like a socialism, like a really left side, is like a progressive. He tried to be very, very progressive. When they try to be very progressive, he said like a very open-minded.
Yes.
Those people. Nobody can tell me about any communism because I know that ideology. Now the thing is, they try to be very liberal, like a very open-minded, and that's open-minded. He's tried to put it in our community, in the whole New York City, legalize that prostitution. Like I said before, we fight for that. We fight for the family. When they met Hiram the last time, I know Hiram Monserrate more than 25 years. I said, Hiram, we have that situation in the community. Hiram, he tried to do something, but when you coming together, you do a very strong thing. Now the community, you have it now right now very supporting the community. We working together. All the media kind to talk about the issue. Right now, the community expect the police officer how to enforce the law. This is most important right now. You're going to repeat many times in our community that you never can accept that prostitution has to be legalized in our community in whole New York City. It is unacceptable.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very
It's
much
totally out of hand.
And I just want to add to that. If there's anything that I could underscore here, it is the blatantness. How blatant. They were literally, and I have to make this critique to the department as much as it pains me. There would be police officers on the street, and right 100 feet from there, 6-7 streetwalkers on the corner on Roosevelt Avenue. No enforcement, no moving them along. It was the blatant lawlessness that really struck me. And he was away for about 2 years, a year and a half or so in the Dominican Republic, taking care of some family affairs. And so he came back and forth a few times. But when he came the last time, he said to me, he said, Hiram, this doesn't even look like my neighborhood. This is a different world. What happened? And what happened was bad leadership, misguided leadership, and a false ideology that says everything goes. Look, poverty is real in America and it's real in our city. But you can't allow people to steal from the local drugstore 20 or 30 times a month, get arrested, get let go, no consequences, because our pharmacies are going to start closing down, which is what we're seeing. I've spoken to shop owners. The whole idea of shoplifting being a victimless crime is lunacy. We're losing small business owners. Many of them Immigrant store owners. We're losing our chain pharmacy stores. You know, bodegas literally have chained up laundry soap. You know, what kind of society are we creating when we go into a Rite Aid or a CVS, and to get toothpaste, you have to call the attendant? And so people need to wake up, because the reason this is all happening is because of leadership. And we need to change leadership, or at least get the leaders to be more responsible in their actions. And that is, we need to have safety. We need to have some basic rule of law. And we need to create an environment that uplifts everyone. We don't want to penalize people who became doctors or store owners. We want to uplift. And I think we can do that collectively, but we can't have a society where everything goes, because then we just have anarchy.
You know, what you're saying is so true. And it's so funny, because you know what? I would be a migrant, because I was born in Cuba.
That's right.
I came in 1962, and I was very lucky the United States existed, because I was fleeing from what? From communism. From communism was basically taking and not respecting property, not respecting rights. And I was very lucky to come to this country. My father had to start again as a doctor, but he did. And he was able to get his license back. It had to work, but the country gave him an opportunity. I think that somehow this idea that you can get things without working, that there's no effort in anything. You know, I always tell people, well, if you want to play sports and you want to be on a team, you have to produce. You can't just get it because you were a victim. So now they're going to put you to play first base. That doesn't go. And, what's been happening is so crazy. I wanted to ask you, Ramon, what direction do you feel the leaders of our communities need to take? Not just in New York, but in the whole United States, specifically here. But what direction do you think they should take?
Before my question, let me tell you something. I had to send a directly message right here. My message is very directed to the mafia in Queens, very directly. You cannot accept them prostitution one block away of the public school.
That's right.
This is unacceptable. America is not for that. America is not for that. America is for people came here to work. This is a country for the opportunity.
Right.
I love this country. Because you came to America, you have a lot of opportunity to study, to work, but America is not for that issue, not for prostitution issue. This country is for the people came here to work, to study, and love other people. This is America. The direction right now, we think, we have to empower the community. To give you power in the community, you have to enforce the law. I believe that easiest country law. You have a lot writing law. You have a very good police department. You have very strong federal government here, right here. That the community is right now, in my community, our community right now, everybody to united for move ahead the community. Now our direction is very simple. Enforce the law, to clean the community, to gain more police officers. That's the most important. Roosevelt Avenue has to clean it right away. We expect for the level government, local government, state government, and federal government, we expect to come to Roosevelt Avenue, because if you wait 5 months, you may be lost our community. It's very simple.
He's right about that. Let me just piggyback on that.
Go ahead. I want to comment on that.
He's pointing out two of the brothels. One of the brothels on 99th Street and Roosevelt Avenue, where there were two brothels across the street from two public schools, PS 19, PS 307. The Community Education Council passed a resolution. In that resolution, they stated that their complaints fell on deaf ears and they could not get any help. How outrageous could it be that our teachers and our parents and our children have nowhere to go, and there's operating 24 hours a day brothels across the street from the school, and none of our elected officials, not one of them, stood up and said, close that brothel on 99th Street down. That's outrageous. Where was our council person, assembly member, senator, borough president, congress members, mayor's office, governor's office? No one. We got out there, you put up the picture. We were the first people to get up there in front of it and had a protest in front of the brothel. We're going to have another protest very soon at the brothel next to a church, right next door to a church in our community, right there in Jackson Heights, Corona, Elmhurst community. And so we have seen so much in Albertson Street, 1 block from a mosque and 1 block from PS 89, another brothel. In fact, about 7 brothels operate within a 2-block radius of PS 89 in Elmhurst and Jackson Heights. How? How can this be? Could it be that the power structure and our elected officials believe that it's okay to do this in a heavily immigrant, Latino, Asian, South Asian community? Is that okay for us? Is that what the message is here? I mean, you know, pick the message. None of them seem too good. What is clear to me, and for every resident of our community, if you're hearing my voice, whether you love me or you don't love me, call your elected officials and tell them, each and every one of them, that we can never allow this to happen again. I know the police department is going to take control. I saw them out there today. Our police commissioner came by Saturday and toured the community as a result of our rally. We had about 250, 300 community residents that went to the streets on Roosevelt Avenue and 90th Street, K Street, demanding more police resources and safety. The amount of people in the last 6 weeks that I have spoken to, walking on the street, literally coming up to me, hugging me, and begging me to help on this issue because there's desperation. The desperation is real. Our community is hurting, and we need everyone, all hands on deck. Doesn't matter what party you're with. Doesn't matter if you're a supporter of Ramon or me or anyone else. We got to be ready to put all our differences aside, keep this community safe, and keep our kids safe.
Keep our families safe.
Keep them safe.
Well, I was going to say to you, because we're running out of time, I'm sure the people going to be watching this show are going to communicate to you. How can they reach you both? Is there an email or?
I have a website, HiramMonserrate.com. You could always reach me there.
Okay, very good.
HiramMonserrate.com. Shoot me an email. I'll get back to you in 24 hours. Ramon?
My phone number is 929-588-0143.
Una vez más?
Yes. Do you know who going to close the brothel, the prostitution? People.
That's right.
People.
We are.
Right now, we're going to close. People ready to close every single prostitution in Jackson Heights, Elmhurst, and Corona. People going to close.
Ramon, I totally agree with you. For those of you watching, we need to wake up. And even the people who are running these institutions, think about it. If it was your daughter, would you want her working in your institution? And think about your friends. Would you want to wake up one morning and your friend is dead because somebody knifed him, stealing his money? Would you be happy? We need to take a look and be human beings and realize we all suffer when we lose our loved ones. When our community dies, we all die. Man has civilization. We come to the end of the show, but I want to let you know that a very close friend of mine was attacked, I won't say more, in that area a week ago and was robbed and almost killed. And this is why the show tonight with District Leader Monserrate, with President Ramirez, it's a wake-up call to us. Let's fix what we have going on. Let's unite. Let's collaborate. For those people who need jobs, let's make jobs. Let's produce jobs. Let's produce a safe economy. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
For being here.
An honor. An honor.
It's great to have you. And for those of you watching, as Mr. Ramirez said, this is the United States of America. If we lose this country, where are you going to go to live next? Think about that well. Let's not later on have remorse. Let's save our country now. Let's save Queens now. Let's make a prosperous and safe community. We'll see you on the next episode of A Time for Truth show. Good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet